Okay, this is segment I think 6 on color and the user interface in Cuis Smalltalk, and I'm expanding a bit, and I'm going to talk today about MetaProperties. So let me first clear the decks here a bit, get rid of some of this clutter, uh, and I'm going to move this over here. And so first we have to talk about what we mean by meta properties, and to motivate that I'm going to show you, actually, sorry, we'll do this first. I want to get a menu up, and I'll pin it so it stays around a bit. And now we actually have to load the meta properties, so I'm going to bring up a I'm going to bring up a workspace and say feature require morph meta properties, and do it. Okay, and that's going to bring in a bit of kit. The probably the most expensive is because it has to do some calculations, is the morphic color editor. And okay, so now let's start with an example. Yeah, I don't have to. I'm not going to save anything there. The system doesn't like me to lose work, so it asks if I really want to throw some things away. Okay, so see now a menu after loading the meta properties, we get a new area down here that has some color properties, and there are two types of things that can go on here. One is we can do a drag and drop thing, and I guess I better well let's get a string morph perhaps. Okay, we'll do this bit of kit again, and we can drag a value from here over to there. We can take the morph position and drag that and drop that over there, and oops, now the string morph being the same color, you don't see it. Let me go ahead and change that, and let's get crayon colors. Some of us may remember a crayon box when we were kids, and these are the actual colors and color names from the crayon box. So if we make that robin egg blue, and we do that again with the morph position. Oh, I need to bring this to the front. Okay, there we are. So, oops, pardon me. So we see the string morph actually is there, and it's in front, and so forth. So we have either a drag and drop thing, or we have an editor that comes up, and so Cuis Smalltalk. This actually came up near the string, which is why it's so far on the right. And or I'd like a choice palette, and say, okay, I can accept that. So there are two things going on here. We get it. If we click, we either get something like a choice palette or an editor, and if we drag, then for example, if I get, say, another say label morph and open its menu, I can, oops, sorry, I forgot to hit the push pin. There really is a reason to have these things to have more than a one shot. I can grab this and drag it, and voila, Cuis Smalltalk. So drag and drop, and when these things happen, we have to there's some added information here. They're not just simple values that are displaying themselves, because if I take something like a color and I try to drop it on a strike front, can't do that. See that? Layout spec? No, not a layout spec. Can't do that. Okay. Color. Undo a color. Yes, see that green? Okay, so there's a little bit of business about feedback, and you know, we do this fast, you don't even notice it, but it does help us out, and we like to help ourselves out. Uh, so the idea of meta properties is that these are properties, these instance variables. These are all properties of the morphs, and you have to have some kind of annotation to say, you know, how do I know if something's acceptable, and how do I bring up an editor or a choice palette or something of that nature. And so that's what meta properties do. And so now let's go ahead and see about getting into the mechanics of meta properties. And so I'm going to go ahead and start from what I can see. And so we're going to bring up an object explorer. Oh, let me show one more subtlety before I leave here. Typically, submenus show up here on the right, but if we're too close to the right part of the screen and I come up here, you notice the menu pops up on the left. That's because the system knows that the screen isn't that wide, and displaying things off screen is really not very helpful when you're trying to convey information. So it puts it on the left rather than the right. Just a little subtlety of the interface. So again, this is generations of tool users working on these things. So there are a lot of subtle things that are done for us to help ourselves out here. And again, you are now part of the solution. You're empowered to help make the system better, you know, as you use it, and you know, those sorts of things, and add things. This is not my code. This is not just Juan's code or Hernan's code or Philip's code or whoever, Shirley's code or whoever, but it's your code too. And so we are all empowered to make things better. Anyway, so when I take up this menu morph, we've got a bunch of menu items. But we also have a new thing, which is a visual property menu item. Okay, and that looks like a clue. So if I say self class, and we print that out, print it, and now you notice this is highlighted. This is very handy because I can hit return and it goes away, or I can you know, select it and do something else with it. And in this particular case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say browse, because that's what I want to see, the visual property menu item. Okay, and so this is has all kinds of stuff here, primarily because there are a bunch of icons in the class and like that. But basically, it knows it has a setter and a getter, something that gets the value and something that updates the value. It has the morph that it's going to make the change to, and it knows its particular name, and it has a meta property. Okay. And so the meta property is the thing that contains information about what values are permissible and what to do with them. So when we click on a menu morph, then we're going to get, we have an edit, so it goes ahead and knows which editor based from the meta property, as I said. So we ought to take a look at these visual property things and see how this kind of threads together. So if we go over here to the class side and take a look at the initialization, so what's happening here is there's a dictionary of meta properties, and the dictionary is we don't want to, well, we like to share things, and these meta properties don't have any state that is mutable. So all the things that check for a color or bring up a color editor are just one one thing. All of these references to color, except color, are references to one particular meta property. So we don't want to just be generating a whole bunch of stuff that we don't need. When we can share, we like to share. And the other thing is we try to be close to English. So in this case, what's happening is and obey the rules for inheritance. So a morph has a layout spec. A rectangle-like morph is a morph which, in addition to the layout spec, has an extent and a position and a color. A bordered rect morph is a rectangle-like morph which also has a border color and border width and inherits the properties above and so forth. And so this is a way of just putting our annotations together, and we say meta property accepts a border style or accepts a string or accepts a font, whatever it happens to be, and that gives us a clue of what's going on here. And so that's a property dictionary that just sets up what these creates these meta properties. And now we want to see how the meta properties are used and put in a menu. And so if I come up a little further here, we have a meta property and we have various different specializations, one of and multi-select and range and so forth. And so if we look at initialize here, the visual property editor is the one we were just looking at, initialize dictionaries. And so here we see that these are how things are put out. So here's the properties themselves. Here's where accepts string is created. Okay, so we have a meta property that takes a string, and its edit procedure takes three bits of information: the morph itself, the meta property itself, and the particular menu item. And so it goes ahead and it can put up it can get the value, it can put up a label with the name and morph position, and then this little fit in world thing. This fit in world thing references the fact that we have to look at the screen real estate and make sure that we're actually displaying it to a user, because as you know, displaying pop-ups where they're not seen is not very handy, and people have noticed that. So same thing for symbol, character, number, color. We got a color selection menu, various sorts of things. Some things are just simply testing on the class of the object, and some things are a bit more interesting. So layout specs, you edit the layout spec and so forth. Okay, so that's how the sort of basic mechanics work on that. And let me come back here, and actually I'm gonna so each meta property in this case has a kind and a meta proc. But if I take a look at, say, a multi-select, let's see, actually one of has a choice collection, because you have to be one of the things that you're choosing from. And so in addition to the stuff that inherits, which is the kind and edit procedure. So let me take a look at the class comment here. And this is the type of thing you can do with meta properties just programmatically. So if we say meta property kind string, what that does is says create a new meta property, and it has to take something whose class is string. Okay, and so this returns a meta property, and then you can ask, does that accept a symbol? Well, it turns out that a symbol is a string. A symbol is a string, so it'll answer yes. One of. Okay, so a meta property, here we are, one of. We take a symbol and we have a choice fee fi fo fum. Does it accept fee, the symbol fee? And the answer is yes. Number range, number with a min and max value. Does it accept something in the range? Yes. If this was 12 rather than 1.2, it would say no. Point range, positive point. You can even do things like pattern matching. So the test is, MetaProperty via test. You can put any arbitrary test in here, and so you can handle pretty much whatever comes up. So that's how MetaProperties work. They just have a way of annotating particular properties to say, I know that if this thing's a color, then I have a MetaProperty that is the accepts color MetaProperty. If I drop a color here, I get this nice little square, and if I drop it here, I'm going to get an X, and so forth. And so let's talk about drag and drop. And actually, I think I'll stop here because the bit of mouse business is complex, and I'll go for just a segment on the event model and how this drag and drop thing is done. And so we'll stop right there, and hopefully you'll click on the next one. Hope you learned stuff. I'm learning things as I'm doing this. Thanks much for watching.